For this video, I'm going to be sharing my experience in trying MDA for the very first time ever. Now, this happened last Saturday, so I still have a pretty good take on what happened. But before I get into the trip report I had with it, I want to talk a little about what MDA is, so you know a little about what I was getting myself into. So MDA stands for methylenedioxyamphetamine, and it's a synthetic drug that was created back in the 1900s, I think 1910, for the purpose of being a cough suppressant. But after further research with it, they discovered that ingestion of it created entactogenic and psychedelic-like effects, which were stimulation of tactile sensations, visual enhancements and visual distortions, euphoria, trance-like states, and they kind of just turned away from it, from being a pharmaceutical medicine, just because of the overly hallucinogenic experience that it created. Now, I have never tried a entactogen before, which is what the MDMA, or colloquially Molly, is an entactogenic drug, or an empathogen, where they make everything feel very saturated in feeling and in worth and quality, and makes things just feel very meaningful and happy. Music sounds really good. Touching and feeling things physically just feels like very interesting and pleasurable. Those are the entactogens, but MDA is a little different. MDMA, which is just a little bit different. They call it the sister of MDA. MDMA fully affects a certain part of the serotonergic system that just amplifies tactile enhancement and euphoria, and it is only at extremely high doses of that substance that things will get slightly psychedelic. But with MDMA, or I mean MDA, it has a much higher affinity for binding to the 5-HT2A receptor, which is the receptor responsible for the receptor that many of the classic psychedelics bind to, and MDA binds to this just as heavily and strongly. So the experience that you can expect from taking MDA will be much more imaginative and psychedelic-like, with hallucinations being much more typical on this compared to MDMA. So to get into my experience with it, well, what I had was I bought a gram of crystalline MDA. It was these like rocks that kind of looked like little pieces of salt or something like that, and I powderized them. And I don't recommend this, but I don't have a scale. I didn't weigh my dose because this is a kind of potent chemical. You don't need that much of it, as much as like 10-15 milligrams, and you start feeling this stuff. And what that looks like is just a tiny little dusting pile on a table, you know. So being really cautious, I was just sprinkling little bits of it onto my wallet, and I sprinkled just this tiny little pile. And if I was to estimate how much I was taking, I probably took like 15 to 20 milligrams, somewhere around there, which is what happened to me. Was very noticeable, much more beyond the threshold description of experience. So it's either really potent stuff, or I took more than I thought. But I just took this tiny little dusting pile, poured it on my wallet, and licked it up. And my brother, who actually was just in my last video, he decided he was going to eat 5 grams that night with me to stay up and just kind of explore the night with me as well, you know. And this was last Saturday, and we both dosed at the same time. And I would say about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes later, I started to kind of realize something was happening. And what it was this kind of like fuzziness in my face. It was this fuzziness in my face that made my face like, if like kind of like that tingly glow you get when you're buzzed on alcohol. It made it just feel like my face was standing out, and like, I don't know, it just felt really like noticeable, I guess. And then I started to feel this kind of like building feeling in my stomach, and I very quickly familiarized it with the serotonergic come up that is very similar to me with psychedelics. This just sensation of anxious building. But what I noticed with the MDA is that this anxious building, it wasn't what you get when you're like nervous or like uncomfortable. It was the really childlike, exciting feeling that you get when you're around a girl you like, or you just got a new toy. It was this irrefutable euphoria, butterflies that was building in my stomach, and it just made me start giggling. Like, I just started giggling about everything. And I remember I went downstairs to make tea, and I was just a giggling mess down there. I was just fucking like laughing at everything, like trying to hold it in. Like, it's not really that funny, but I was starting to feel pretty good, you know. And then the next thing I probably remember is the lights in the room looked insanely vivid, almost identical to the ways in which psychedelics amplify color, and the appearance of lights and patterns, where everything just was popping out at me. He has these Christmas lights all over his wall. My brother like decorated his room with all these Christmas lights, and they were just, first of all, extremely deep in color. They were vibrant blues, vibrant reds, vibrant greens, but they looked like they were all popping out like in my fucking face, and everything just appeared to have this like extremely vibrant, static look to it. And I also remember that I was having hallucinations. I would be looking at things, and things would appear to like it would look like something's moving into something else. The guy that I got this from said, called it flutter vision, what this stuff gives you, and it was kind of like that, I guess, where it just looked like things were slowly moving into each other and like moving around, very, very psychedelic like. And when I would move my head around real quick, it would look like just a collage of lights and shapes just kind of like smudging around and making out the image that I'm seeing. Next thing that I remember of this experience is the feeling of pressure, of being up against a surface, and the feeling of moving across to that surface felt just awesome. I was rubbing my hands across my legs, my thighs, like pushing down, and doing it right now. I can remember that feeling I was getting, but it was just this extremely warm, euphoric tingle that was everywhere that I was pressing. And I remember I laid down on the bed and was just like going like this, rubbing everything, just feeling that tingle from putting pressure on everything. And that to me was a very entactogenic like effect, and I felt like I got why everybody likes to take these kind of chemicals at festivals where they're dancing and listening to music. And that kind of brings me to my next thing, is music sounded just beautiful. Me and my brother, when we trip together, we don't always put on music. Sometimes we do, but this time it was like fucking, because remember, he took 5 grams. That's a lot of mushrooms. And he was gone immediately. And he was trying to like play Xbox and watch videos and stuff, but I was like, nah, man, this is like, I'm gonna put fucking music on. I'm gonna get this music going and we can just space out, you know? And the music sounded just beautiful. It sounded so like motivating and making you want to change everything about your life and tell people that you've hurt, you're sorry, and tell people that you love them. Everything about just quality and like bringing up the feeling. And I remember around the 3-hour mark of this experience, that rolling, tingling euphoria that was in my stomach, the butterflies that was making me feel like a giddy little kid again, it started to fade out. And I started to go like, oh no, like, where's, like, it's going away. That good feeling is going away. And it made me realize, like, shit, this is why people get so fucking sad when they come off of these things, or get addicted to it, or compulsively take more and more and more and more, is because when that glow washes away, it leaves you just with this, like, observer type feeling. And I already kind of associate it with, like, it doesn't make you fucking depressed. It puts your body and your serotonin in a sort of lull for a little while. And I did experience it. It wasn't sadness, but it was this just feeling of observation, lack of focus, lack of wanting to focus, and just kind of this general fatigue in my mind. But not sadness, not depression or suicidal thoughts, or I don't feel the same about things anymore. It was honestly very similar. The after effects of this experience were very similar to that of a profound, intense psychedelic, such as LSD or mushrooms. I've felt like that the day later, where it's just like you're in a zone all day and you're just kind of going through the motions, but you're not really there all day. You're just kind of like, what the fuck just happened to me? And that happened to me with this the day after, where I was just quiet and observant and just thinking about what the fuck happened. But that, another thing I remember from the experience was me and my brother got into a really, really good talk, a really deep talk, where it just felt very good to be sharing my perspectives with somebody who got it and who was actually bouncing his perspectives back. And easily we talked for like 2-3 hours, really, really deep, locking eye contact, just talking about the universe and psychedelics and space, and if DMT has to do with death, and what we would do as humans to save the planet, and just the whole 9 yards. Those kind of talks you get on when you take those kind of things. And it was just, it was a really good first experience. I got a good first-hand look into the entactogenic, empathogenic effects that they bring about, of the feeling good when you're touching things and listening to music, and feeling good when you're bonding with people and letting go your boundaries and telling them things that you haven't wanted to before, even if you might regret it. But that shit's good, man. Like, just opening up as a human being. That, I felt that experience. And I don't know if I've said much, but it was very similar to psychedelics. it was like a trip. My pupils, boom, huge. My jaw is clamped, and that's the serotonergics, but just the headspace I was in was very, very psychedelic, like easily like a tab of acid all day, 100 mics of acid all day. Just the visual distortions and the blowing up of saturation of color and brightness, and increased empathy in music and communication. Very psychedelic like, but also in its own sense very unique and new to itself. And it's definitely something that I would try again, just to reintroduce myself back to that state and kind of just get another take on it, get another look on it. So that's basically it for this video. This was my trip report with MDA. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will be back with more.